me round, tore up, back in Detroit City, singing the low down, Motown, Motor City blues. He blew my mind.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. We're down to the end of day 2, but as always, we save the best for last. We have a special guest. Now, I've been in this industry for a long time, and when you hear of Donna, Oddegard's experience as a business founder and owner of First Nations Broadcasting up in Australia. They have 4 television channels, 5 radio stations in Australia. She's a recipient at Order of Australia, and she's the advocate for Indigenous business, Indigenous affairs. So here is someone that has excelled beyond my means. I'm glad you're here, Donna, and I welcome you, and I'm excited to hear your words of experience. Everybody, this is Donna.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you, everyone. Look, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you today. But before I begin, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name's Donna Oddegard. I'm a First Nations Aboriginal Larrakia traditional owner of the land and seas surrounding Larrakia country, which is located in Darwin in the north of Australia, Northern Territory. It's our custom to acknowledge all the First Nations peoples on whose land we are seated or gathered, no matter where we are in the world. So for this virtual presentation, I would like to pay my respects to all the elders, those present and those emerging elders through our youth. I'd also like to thank Michelle and also Natoa for inviting me to speak at this Indigenous Youth Virtual Summit. I'm speaking today about the importance of financial literacy skills, especially if you're thinking about actually planning to travel abroad for work or study, or perhaps both. I'll speak from a perspective as a First Nations elder, but also as Adam very kindly stated, you know, I wear a number of hats. I won't go into those at this point, but it's connected. Everything I do is connected to our people and the needs of our people here in Australia, but also our connections right across the globe, the First Nations peoples, and all those who support us. So for the past 25 years or so, I've travelled abroad in various roles, and I currently, one of the lead roles I have at the moment is the co-chair for the Voice to the Australian Parliament, government, and it's a massive task, but also a great honour, because we're in the process of stage 2 of doing something quite historic, and that is extensive work around representing or encouraging the voices of our people to speak on our behalf for those things that are important to us, and how we want to design a voice to the Parliament to improve the lives of our people, and everything that we require to, as First Nations peoples, have our cultural integrity intact and be able to lead what we want in terms of our social and economic development going forward. So I think it'll be quite useful, or hopefully useful, to share what I've learned and what I learned in a very pretty much quick space of time. And I may relate this, might be more useful to relate it to my experience as an undergraduate student. I wasn't I wasn't a youth in the youth category. You know, I was a mature age student, but nonetheless, it really taught me the importance of being financially literate, and a bit of a survival course as well, because I went totally unprepared, just wide-eyed and out, you know, left my humble home and went out into the wide world, and before I knew it, I was in Arizona as a student, and with no money because my credit cards or my cards didn't work. So that was challenging. So the focus is youth and financial literacy skills abroad. Hopefully, you may gain a greater understanding, or at least a level of understanding, you know, about the importance of this skills competency, and to avoid, you know, the worst case scenario, potential disasters, and that risk your overall well-being, health and well-being. We talk a lot about that in Australia, and also, you know, financial situation. So throughout this presentation, look, it's important to me as the First Nations Larrakia elder to show visuals or images of places of sacred significance, because when I or others travel, whether it's across our own countries, we refer to our own, where we come from as country, or whether we're travelling overseas, abroad, we're very mindful to pay respect. So cultural protocols and also ethics, how we behave, is really important. So I wanted to insert some of that imagery for you so that you can get a sense of actually where I'm coming from. So, so whilst we're speaking about a very important topic, just know that I'm paying respect to you as well, but also sharing in some of that that cultural, you know, spirituality of where I actually come from. So if we could go into the first slide, thanks, Mike. I've actually I've put this image. This is where I live in Darwin. It's very tropical there, and to put this image into context, it's a little bit blurry, I apologise for that, but this is actually where I live. This is directly out the front of my house. This is on a women's dreaming site. This is a crocodile formation. I'm using my hands. But this is one of our main totems, and to have it, you know, on the site where I live is very important, significant to me. And to its right is another formation which is submerged. But essentially our crocodile, or Dungalubba, is a very protective totem, or, you know, around our laws, and guides us in what we do. So whenever others come to my country, or particularly come to this place, there's a practice we have to do, which is introduce people to country. So I would take visitors to this site, and we would have a welcoming ceremony, which is walking only a short way into the water, because, you know, we have crocodiles, as you would understand, and other predatory sea creatures. But and I've had crocodiles come up to my house. So what we do is we go there and we actually put the water from this sacred place, this sea, to our armpits, to introduce our sweat into the water and to protect us. So this is where a long time ago, we used to have a lot of ceremonies in this water. It doesn't happen now because population's grown. So it's about 25 years ago that this was the last time that ceremony took place here. So I'm responsible to, as a custodian and a traditional owner, to make sure wherever And if any of you visit, I'll certainly welcome you. But as part of your, cultural immersion, you will be introduced to these sorts of ceremonies and welcoming. So that's Dangalaba, and you may see some images which I should just point out. There may be some of our people who have passed, but I have authority to show these images. Otherwise, that wouldn't happen. So just a warning in case anyone from Australia who's Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent, that this may offend people. I haven't had a problem to date, but you always have to be very, very sensitive around this. So if we can go on to the next slide, we might be able to skip through that because I've just said that, as you can see. Now this is my family, and that's me obviously, the one in the white shirt to the far left of the screen. These are the people, we were involved in a land claim, longest running land claim in Australia's history. So this is why I wear many hats, because whereas we don't speak a lot of languages these days, my father spoke 5 and he was a lawman, very strong in culture. And unfortunately, that whole age group, those seniors, those elders have all passed away. So I wear so many hats so that I can ensure that our people in the communities and what we say is the grassroots has the same opportunity as they should, but also have their rights, cultural rights and knowledges and rights to hunt and forage and look after country. That's the land and the seas. So we still have people living very traditionally, but it's quite a concerning matter, and this is why I've taken on the role as a co-chair for a voice, so we can turn things around as much as possible. So this beautiful place here is called Diamond Creek, and this is where we go, and you'll have crocodiles there. It's inland a little bit from the ocean, but that's a fairly significant part of my family, and they send their best. They know that I'm talking today. All right, if we can go on to the next slide. I think I've laid this out as 3 principles, and the reason I've done that is to make it, to take a common sense approach. We can all look online and we can actually see what our respective jurisdictions or authorities actually provide in terms of points of contact and things like that, and various departments, but you can get lost in all of this. And if the aim of what we're doing today is to be looking at financial literacy skills and building and ensuring that when we do travel, and particularly for youth, and I understand that I'm speaking with perhaps an age group between 20 and 30. I'm more in the upper echelons, I should say, up around getting close to the 70s. But the thing is, as in everything we do in life, we have to prepare for everything. And in addressing many forums, it seems it's like anything we do. We have to prepare. We have to ensure that we have done the research, and so it's making sure you've got everything you need to enable the experience you have abroad to, as near as possible, go according to plan. That's the purpose around that preparation. So like anything, preparation takes, takes a lot of effort and time, but doing it properly and putting that time in, and ensuring that you have some skills before you leave your home, before you leave your country, will put you in a good position, or the best possible position in the event of the worst case scenario happens. And I talk about that a lot because that is what I've seen over the years, where some of our people, for whatever reason, have not had enough mentoring or even counselling, or undertaken any sort of courses or instruction around financial literacy. It's a huge problem. So there are adequate resources in your country, or in each of our countries, that, as I said, guide us on information, rules and regulations for travel abroad. However, in my view, having financial literacy is absolutely essential in terms of the preparation. How you budget, how you manage your finances, and you, at the outset, you need to be extremely clear, very, very clear on the following things I'm going to be, dot points that I'll be talking about, because let's face it, everything we do on a daily basis affects your finances and your dollar value in what you do. I'm not talking about person, I'm talking about what you do every day, whether you're, from the moment you get up. And look, Adam pointed out at the beginning that I'm in the media industry, I own the media. It's the largest network in Australia, and it happens to be First Nations owned. And it's full commercial. But all of my staff, and this is a good example of what I'm saying, particularly, not particularly for First Nations people, it's for everyone really, but we have the benefit of having a very close connection. We have ethics around who can sit next to whom, male, female, languages. Some of our people, English is like a fourth, fifth language. So in my organisation, imagine First Nations people coming from a remote community, and within a fairly short period of time are actually broadcasting on radio or television or presenting or camera work. So all of these activities happen as a matter of what we do in the business. But at any one time, if any of my staff were asked the question, what business are we in? I can confidently say, without being there, that they will say we're in the money-making business. And the reason that I made a point of not just informing, but training our people at all levels, even those who have gone into engineering, that having financial literacy is a key learning skill for life. Now, since we've done that intensely for the past 15 years, some of our people having that literacy learning and skills have gone from living in what we call the long grass, which is pretty much that, living homeless and rough, to actually have been with me for a long time now, still, and they've bought cars, or they've managed to get a deposit for a low-cost house. So this is why I was keen to actually, even though it's not my area of expertise, but to really impress upon the importance of having that literacy, financial literacy, learnings and skills. I've seen the difference it makes when our people have to travel from remote locations even to the city, and how having those skills and approach to valuing the dollar wherever they go, because it's saving their lives in some cases. So generally, if we go back to speaking about travelling abroad, you know, obviously we're going into a foreign country, and the fluctuations in your dollar, for example, and I just wanted to weave in a little bit here about my own experience as a mature age student some 20-something years ago. So excited, I was an ambassador for the university. Green as grass, in other words, I had no financial literacy skills, but about travel abroad, never been out of pretty much my hometown. And all of a sudden I found myself in Flagstaff, Arizona. But from the time that I left Australia, I was just absolutely oblivious to the pitfalls or the worst case scenario. And I can assure you the worst case scenario happened. My key card wouldn't work. I hadn't had any, you know, currency that would have even given me some cash in my pocket. Once I got to Flagstaff, after having to go through these various airports, I pretty much was starving. And once I got there, my luggage didn't turn up. It had gone off to Germany or somewhere. So I had no clothes, no nothing. Wandering around at night time, you know, the most horrifying thing. So, you know, so that probably took about a month before I could adjust. So I pretty much had to rely on the kindness and charity of others, you know, to start university and to actually be able to, you know, navigate my way through day-to-day living. Very hard lesson to learn. So, you know, as a mature age student, I should have known better, but, you know, that's not what I was taught. I was never taught about those sort of things. Even though I had, you know, started up little cottage industry businesses, you know, it's a different thing altogether when you find yourself abroad. Yes. So, so I never ever considered that there would be a fluctuation in the dollar. And of course, when I arrived, it had gone way down. So I was really behind the 8 ball the whole 7 months that I was there. But fortunately, they had student exchanges where I was wearing other people's clothes most of the time and having a lot of fun at that. So we need to be seriously considered those sort of things. There are things we need to do before we actually get off the ground, but I just want to just build a picture around and things you probably already realised. You know, you probably know more than me about it, but it's good to have this discussion anyway. So fluctuations are due to global markets, global politics, current trends, and pandemics such as we're experiencing with COVID-19. But then on top of that, you have all these, you know, global, you know, environmental, you know, climate change disasters as well. So we can be put in some pretty uncertain and precarious positions if you know, we don't at least have some kind of financial literacy to be able to get us, you know, into a better position. You know, additionally, when you think about, you know, the foreign laws of different countries, the currency itself, different banking systems, and then having to navigate your way around different languages, it can be quite, you know, quite distressing and also quite harmful to your health and stress levels. The different customs, and that's why I introduced my own cultural, you know, story really into this presentation. And then we go on to the different services, you know, that we may take for granted in our own countries, accommodation, social activities, medical service, and much more. Therefore, when I talk about preparation, I can't stress enough that you need to be prepared to be able to access your money in whatever form, in any event, to at least make your travel enjoyable. So a lot of it's to do in the preparation. It's what you do prior to travel. Traveling abroad, particularly if you're on, on your own, you don't have a buddy or you're not with a group, you need to prepare for the following. Importantly, you have to have all the regulatory documents, paperwork, such as your passports and your medical insurance, work visas, study visas. Sometimes we want to work and study, and we need all of those consent forms as well. That's required not only by our country of origin, but also the country we're travelling to. So what I always do now is I ensure that I have a digital copy of everything, literally everything, so that we can access it if need be, and try to not lose your phone, as I've done several times, because I do carry my credit cards on those as well. So in preparation, you have to be very clear yourself, okay, for the purpose of your travel. So, because sometimes we can start off from one purpose and then change tack, as I almost did. So, clarify whether it's for vacation or work, study, or all of that, mixing in a bit of that. So you need to know and have on the record where you want to go. As I said earlier, be aware of the laws and regulations, and also your responsibilities as a foreign traveller. And I use the term foreign traveller because we use that in Australia. I'm also mindful that it might offend some people, but also, it's important to know what you want to do when you get there. And that's really important to also factor in your financial literacy, skills, because if you decide you might want to do a short trip somewhere, well, that's going to eat into your overall budget. When you're travelling abroad, and as I say, and I have to keep repeating it, you have to know the laws and regulations. I mean, so many times I see visitors to Australia, tourists or other, and they get unstuck or get into a bit of a pickle, as we say, because they haven't done their preparation or their homework on certain regulations. So your budget is critically important. You need to be able to have all those line items around what it is you intend, or you intend to spend your money on, and also have contingency around things like COVID-19. You need to have a plan. You also need to plan for any kind of emergency or disaster that may occur in the place that you're visiting. So if we go on to the next, look, I just want to say, if you want to stop me at any point, just do so, because I don't want to be just a one-way conversation. Now, this image here are the children of my community. This is a community called Bellewin. A couple of those children aren't with us any longer, but it is one of the most impoverished communities in the Northern Territory, and I keep this image with me because those children, when I go to my community, You know, they're so happy and they never want me to leave, and it's quite heartbreaking to know that I'm leaving behind such beautiful people who through just through the that whole nature of being disadvantaged, and that whole perpetuation of that they can't get out of. So the work that I do is always aimed at you know, any one of those children or now adults with babies of their own having the same opportunities to travel, even to travel abroad. They want to travel abroad. So how, you know, important to that is getting them through school, getting to the point where they can articulate and express what they want to do, and their aspirations, but also have all the, be equipped with all the skills that they need. And as I say, financial literacy is high on the on that agenda, as I see it for me and for many of our leaders. So if we want to go on to the next slide, I think that'll just that goes into the planning stage. So I think we'd all agree that really no amount of preparation will be as important to you as your financial planning and your budget and management of that budget. Sometimes it's tempting to, you know, to overspend. I mean, I do it every week, but if you're travelling abroad, you really have to be, really, really disciplined and allow yourself for those, you know, a bit extra if you're prone to going outside your budget, even in your daily lives. Your finances dictate your daily lives as it is, and you need to be competent of financial literacy and have those skills so that you're able to prepare and plan for travel abroad, work and living expenses. Financial planning and budget management will enable you, if you get them right now, and I can't impress this enough, and I say to my staff and those groups of youth, recently we had the biggest conference in Darwin, and it was focused on youth. And, you know, there was more, you know, you young ones, you youth, have got more, I guess, insight, but also you're just so much smarter. Say myself at your age, between 20 and 30, you're just so much more well equipped, so switched on. So I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but if you get it right now, no matter what field you want to go into, and some of that may require you to travel abroad, get those skills right, because they'll be lifelong, and you'll just have the quality of life that you actually you want. And you know, that's important too. One thing, travelling abroad, but you know, everything you do, make a learning curve. So in terms of the planning your travel abroad, you need to make sure of these following. Now, I've put these together. This is not exhaustive, you know, there is so much more, but I'm trying to approach this in a very practical way. So the obvious is, have enough money before you leave abroad. And as I mentioned earlier, cost every item, from what you're wearing to, you know, what you're going to be, you know, potentially needing on the trip, but also once you get there, and try to have a very comprehensive plan in place. And keep a diary as well. That helps. So ensure you take into consideration, as I mentioned earlier, that currency differentiate between your own country of origin and the country you're travelling to. Obviously, that means food and accommodation, living expenses and social activities, but also travelling, you know, from your actual, you know, the place where you actually arrive to where you're going to. So that it may not be as accessible, or it may be higher or lower, and definitely it will fluctuate as markets fluctuate. So to that, it's really important that your insurance coverage is adequate for the worst case scenario, and that may include hospitalisation and emergency evacuation, and potentially other things. You know, you may need to depart quickly for an emergency back home. What I have got stuck on, really caught out a couple of times, is that I haven't actually looked into telephone internet plans before I've left home, so I haven't been able to connect immediately. We want everything instantly because we've been spoiled by technology. So make sure that you have the connection there of the country that you've travelled to, and ensure you have current phone and internet plans closed, paid, before you leave home, and in your absence, put things on hold, because that's another thing. I came home to a very, very large phone bill because I hadn't closed it temporarily. So if you're working in a foreign country, make sure you have all the required clearances and permits to do so. Critically important. You can look on the internet before you leave home, but like here in Australia, you know, we have our Department of Immigration, and on that you'll find everything you need to know about working in Australia, the process. And we have a really, really good, many of you may even know, you've probably travelled to Australia, but we have a really good system here, support system. We have youth support systems, pretty much, well, easygoing, laid back, and but that doesn't always happen in all the countries you may travel to. And unfortunately, in some countries, you may face harsh penalties if you haven't met all those requirements. I touched on the fact that some countries have different languages, customs and traditions, and this really goes to that whole cultural protocols that we talk about here in Australia. You know, we call them Aboriginal cultural protocols and ethics. Ethics is around the behaviour. In other words, if you do go to those sacred site places, and you may not even be aware of it, well, you can, obviously, if you're not aware of it, and someone's approached you and pointed out it's a sacred site or place, that's okay. It's not your fault. But if you do go to places like Kakadu National Park, or you'd know about Uluru in Central Australia, there's certain things. There's plenty of signage and to actually inform you. Not some warnings, but mostly it's to inform and educate you. And the same thing too, you've got to do that with everywhere you go as a First Nations person. If you're going on to places, First Nations, culturally significant, just be respectful and courteous, and try to learn about those customs prior to departing your country of origin, because that can also be costly and eat into that whole, if you've gone down the track of, ensuring that you've got all your financial literacy skills and putting things into practice. And if you go somewhere where you accidentally damage something or desecrate something, well, there's a penalty for that. So that's not always well known. So I guess in that point, what I'm saying is there may be laws of a country that penalises travellers or foreigners for failure to acknowledge or adhere to certain rules around that. Now, if you're looking at this slide, there's a beautiful picture of a group of children. Now, they're from the Tiwi Islands when I visited about 10 years ago. And our parliament, we have the Legislative Assembly, and Madam Speaker Jane Agard, who is the Madam Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, she took over the wigs and robes of the parliament, and that's an actual mace, a gold mace from the parliament, from Darwin, and we flew them over in a little charter plane to the Tiwi Islands, and these adorable children actually acted out the roles of members of parliament. How quickly they learned, and by the end of the 2 days, they actually, did a moot parliamentary sitting. Now, I just wanted to put that in to say that we, including our children, we have the ability to learn very quickly, particularly around literacy and financial literacy. And I'm pleased to say that financial literacy is now being realised and acknowledged, that it must be taught in schools for our youth, leaving school, before they leave school, so that they can actually, if they do have to travel abroad, or for other reasons, across Australia for work or what have you, that they are skilled and equipped to be able to be in a better position to manage their finances. So if we can go to the next slide, thanks. The reason I put in prevention, that's pretty much referring to risk management. And we don't talk a lot about that, particularly in the schools, or even in the, those, at university in the early stages, depending on the course, of course. But I put it in here to really put out there that having good financial literacy skills should prevent or at least mitigate potential financial disaster. So those worst case scenarios that I touched on, and the what if meaning around that. If you actually get into a disastrous situation that you have no control over, simply running out of, if you have a run of bad luck, which, we have superstitions around that, or any unforeseen events like I spoke about, if you get caught up in, say, bushfire disasters or flooding, or even the COVID. We have one state in Australia, Victoria, that you probably have read about or seen on the news, where the whole state's been in lockdown for 7 months. It's disastrous. So what happens to our visitors? So you have to be equipped to be able to navigate your way through, ensure that you've whatever finances you have will cover you to a certain point, and then you need to reach out to our government for additional help, and certainly to those back home, whether it's parents, guardians, or colleagues, or friends, or whoever, or your own government, to assist in that. So once again, always have that, that contingency plan. But then, even if you're, you're looking at things like, the hikes in accommodation costs, when you actually plan your trip. And this has happened to some of my friends and younger colleagues who've gone overseas and thought, oh yes, well, we can just go to certain places, but they haven't factored in that there has been a shift or an increase in the accommodation, the places they're staying. So that's been, we've had to find some, quick measures to help some of our young people out on more than one occasion in Asia, particularly. So and the living cost, just the actual living cost day to day, will fluctuate as certain local events may happen that cause the cost of the actual living to increase. And as I mentioned before, the fluctuation, I can't impress enough that fluctuation in currency rate. If you're working in a different country and you lose your job for whatever reason, it may be a bigger, much bigger picture event, say, the government has gone into extreme, lockdown or budget crisis or what have you. The first ones to lose their job will be the foreigners. And then that puts you in a position where you're of an inability to get a job. And you see it in the news as well, where we see it in Australia, where we've literally got Australians overseas, begging for help to get back, and we have to advocate and really push the government to help our people out because they've just run out of money. And that's got nothing to do with their own, literacy, management, financial literacy skills or management. It's to do with, external events. Like I mentioned earlier, losing your luggage, as I did, I certainly didn't account for it, was not prepared. And so that puts you in a very precarious position as well, where you have the clothes pretty much you're wearing on your back. If you have a serious accident, or if there's, as I mentioned, a natural disaster, where there's theft or loss of your cash reserves that you're carrying with you, or your credit cards simply don't work, or they've been stolen, and so on. And I have to say, look, I must have, I had 3 credit cards when I went overseas as an exchange student back in the 90s, and none of them worked. They were supposed to, but they did not work in any of those, telling machines. So that was disastrous as well. Thankfully, I relied on the goodwill of people, but we can't do that. We have to do more than that, and I should have known that. So to manage the risk of this happening, it's important to ensure that you're able to rely on good financial literacy skills. And this is why I laid this out as preparation, planning, and prevention or risk management. So importantly, understand and plan for that exchange rate of the dollar and that of a foreign country you're visiting or living in. So ensure your planning and budget is adequate. Ensure you have local banking, several actually I would suggest if you're intending to live and work there, and have compatible cash cards and credit cards and a reserve cash if possible. Have access to persons to assist in the worst case scenario, such as your embassy and or maybe parent, guardian, colleagues, siblings, whoever, and authorities. So I was in a situation where I had no phone, I couldn't use my credit card, I had no cash, so I managed to survive, thankfully, and I don't know how I got through, but I did. So to avoid all that nonsense, you really need that contingency or emergency fund to cover those unexpected financial costs related to the various risks as I've outlined. So access as much information and those guides and local resources in your country to guide you beforehand on potential and unexpected levies. That's another thing. Fees, rules and regulations for travellers and workers abroad, but also check the country that you're visiting or intending to work in or study. Ensure you are adequately trained in financial literacy skills, which is absolutely essential to your preparation in terms of how you budget and manage your finances. Make sure you have adequate funds to cover your travel and other expenses. Should you decide to return home or travel to another country, is what I intended to do, but I couldn't because I just was hopeless at my financial management. So if we could go, look, I think that's pretty much wraps up, but I want to talk about some of these images, if you could just bear with me before we, before I open up to some questions. Now, the image with is some of my staff who, they're all female there. They're not all, there's majority male at the moment, but that's neither here nor there. The main thing is that I'm really proud of them because we made sure that as part of our training, doesn't matter what it is, media or engineering or what have you, digital technology, broadcasting, you name it. But every course has a, well, we just call it smart money management. And we also teach that in the communities, but essentially what we're talking about is financial literacy. Why? Because if you look at all of those, pretty much all the people, First Nations people who are my staff and in the crowd, and who have the expertise, to run a huge television station and radio stations, they come from abject poverty. You would not know that. They have learned how to manage their money. They are getting ahead in their lives, but they're maintaining their cultural integrity and practices. And that gathering to the right of your screen is one of the biggest cultural events in Australia, which has been suspended, during the COVID crisis, I should say, is called Garma. And so every year, this is where we all come together. And as I say, some of those people, English is like a third, fourth, fifth language. So when we do the money management or financial literacy training, it has to be translated into various languages. Now, that's what we do at First Nations Broadcasting Australia. We have a big translation program for translators, and in over about 40 different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages. So it's really, these are the kind of challenges that we have and endure, but we are able to navigate quite successful. One of the languages I was learning, which is not my first language, is Bidingyara, and I was learning that in the 90s. And numeracy goes up to about 7. So you get to, because anything beyond 7 in Bidingyara language and culture is many. So imagine teaching literacy, financial literacy, and even literacy and numeracy in that cultural context, and then applying it to developing lifelong skills around financial literacy. So we have 4 television channels. One's First Nations TV, one's Tourism TV, First Nations Tourism TV, one's a business channel, one's a local Darwin channel, and the other one is, I've probably gone past it, there's education in there somewhere. There's pretty much 8 television channels, but we have 4 television channels that operate 24 hours a day. First Nations TV has all of those literacy, financial literacy programs in that and in multi-languages. And we work with the banking sectors and also the ASIC, which is the Australian Securities Investment Commission, which is the regulating authority for all business and finance. So it's a big thing. Now, we, because we have 4 channels, we have to have our staff actually program them. We produce 40% of that content, and some of that content is around financial, is the money smart and money management programs. So there's a whole lot of education around that. What's it done? By actually rolling this out right across Australia, we have now some, particularly on the East Coast, not in the North where I come from, but we have some of the major businesses in all areas, even in mining, construction, technology, Indigenous businesses. And so we're now seeing a whole kind of emergence of Indigenous business in Australia. And that's quite exciting. I sit on the biggest Indigenous board in Australia, which is the Indigenous Land and Sea Corporation. And once again, we have a role in ensuring that our people in the communities have the opportunity to do business, and we encourage youth to get involved in that as well. So you can see how very important this is to all of us. So look, I'm going to stop talking. I talk too much. There's a lot to take in, and I'm happy to answer questions or have a discussion.
I love you. You did such a great job. I think it's amazing. One of the things with you having the stations, is there any way people in Canada can see what's on your stations, or is that possible?
At this stage, we have we're going through the process of rolling out First Nations TV right across Australia, and because it's my business, I've had to fund everything. I don't get any government grants or funding for my business, so therefore, I have to. I'm presently looking at investors to roll it out across Australia, but more so I'm looking at digital platforms. I'm looking at platforms so I can actually have, it's absolutely amazing the content that we have. But I'm looking at, other platforms like, who's Jeff Bezos? What's he got? Oh, Amazon. Yeah. And I also spoke to the streaming manager for Apple, who was supposed to get back to me because he was going to assist in perhaps even doing some kind of investment, because it's 100% Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander content in languages, right? I'm looking at those platforms at the moment, and once we get onto those platforms, yes, the whole wide world will be able to see them. At the present moment, we have YouTube. We have a YouTube channel.
Can you send that to me, and then I can send it to the youth?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to. Delighted to. Oh, I'm just looking. Yeah, that's right. I was just checking to see if there are any questions popping up, because I'm not very good on Zoom.
There. Good. I wouldn't leave you hanging. I was just wondering if a youth doesn't have a question right now, is it okay if I forward you questions? Would you mind?
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yes, because, I wear about, let me see, I've got about 10 hats at the moment with different portfolios. And it's like I need, but they're all interrelated.
You need a hat closet. You need your own, you need different, you need different wardrobes for different hats. So I think you need to shop more for clothing.
Well, you notice this is the same jacket I wear everywhere. Yeah, no, I'm very frugal because, I guess I'm more into, whatever revenue we earn through the broadcasting, the television, and through the media, gets reinvested back in. So I would like to think that I'm this big media mogul, but I'm not. It just all goes back into people, and it's four full commercial television channels, which is unheard of in Australia. But that's how we do it.
I'm so grateful for you here today. Here's
Yeah.
Adam.
I want to say, like, man, everything you're saying, you know, there's not, I don't really have any questions because you've kind of layered it out pretty good. The, for me, on listening to you, I'm going to set up to looking forward to visiting Australia and trying
Excellent.
to.
Excellent.
Are you gonna
Yeah.
pay for me as well, Adam? Sorry, I just thought, like, because we're friends, and you know.
Hey, there's no, you know what we should do is we should plan with Natawa to, you know, select some individuals, and a group of us can travel over there and really just do a friendly visit and really get inspired by it.
You need to do the fundraising, so I'm gonna use your face as the poster boy, and you're gonna get me more money for Natoa. You guys all heard it, right? So this is like a verbal contract. He said it. Now the goal is to take as many as we can with us. Preferably, yeah, it's recorded exactly right, and you're right. So we will try to take as many youth as we can. I don't know if my vice chair is on here, Leith, right now, but you heard it. Signed, sealed, delivered. No, I'm just kidding. Before we do go, though, I just want to mention something.
Hold on, Donna wanted to say something.
Oh, go ahead. This is very close to us.
Could I just look? I'm going to forward this document, but you know, since Michelle kindly invited me, I've had pretty much you know, a compacted time to actually look at this whole you know, youth, financial literacy, travel, all this, and I came across a brilliant report, The Power of Youth Travel. Now, I find this very relevant to Australia, and this is also brings in that whole tourism, you know, that whole First Nations tourism that we're setting up here. We don't have a First Nations tourism body, and so therefore we have non-First Nations interests wanting to get the benefits. So I'm at the point where I'm trying to flip that around. You know, that's how I met Tracy Halpapa in New Zealand, because I was her co-chair. And what we did, and this is what we should be doing with Canada as well, we probably will be, but we managed to get through in about a very short period of time, a nation-to-nation, it's called a Trans-Tasman Trade and Indigenous Economic Development Agreement. Monumental. Both Prime Ministers signed off on it, and both Ministers for Aboriginal Affairs signed off on it. So it was quite incredible. Now, I've only recently stood down from that because of these other, you know, competing interests. But one of them is First Nations tourism. And I have really been looking at, and I've spoken to Michelle about this, I've been looking at how we can harness all of that cultural knowledge and what we're doing. I mean, in Australia, First Nations tourism is the only tourism that actually is functioning and operating and doing great things, right? And coming out of COVID, it's going to be the go-to. So when I came across this report, it talks about youth as pretty much the because this generation of young people, they're more informed, more mobile, more adventurous than ever before. So that means that youth travel is only going to increase. Now, when you put a First Nations youth to that, and this has got all data and statistics, you know, the same as OECD, you know, those wonderful reports, you know, that I pushed my way into that day and spoke. But that's a great report for that data gathering that we need to then, as you say, go forth and see if you can get grants or what have you. And
We
let's
could-
get together.
Yeah, we could make a little documentary out of it too, like a short documentary. And
Yes.
because right now we're trying to reclaim identity and culture, and this could be like a culture investment of reclaiming identity of Indigenous.
Absolutely.
You
I
know,
love
and-
this. We should set up I think this should be a separate meeting, and I 100% think we need to brainstorm this.
I would be
One here
happy.
was beautiful. It said Indigenous tourism may even be the thing that bounces us all back from the pandemic revenue loss.
I believe it will. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because, as I say, I sit on, some of these boards, and whether it's the federal government's Department of Environment, agribusiness, and heritage, I've lumped them all into this now. But and the sciences, what they're saying is that, we need to look to Indigenous knowledges to help us solve our environmental disasters.
yes.
Our climate change. We need that knowledge. Okay, well, if you need that knowledge, okay, you're not getting it for free anymore, because that's what we've all experienced. We've been absolutely ripped off. So this is why we need to be financially literate, so we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
There's got to be, with all due respect, and I say this to my staff, there's a dollar value on every single second that you're living in and working in this organisation. There's value to that. It's a whole kind of mindset. And so what we're doing, essentially, by having these discussions and forums, and we need to tease it out more, we're looking at a global First Nations economy that is going to bring the world out of its disaster because of all of this ripping off and capitalisation and everything. Now, I'm not against capitalism, because being a businesswoman has got me to where I am today, but I don't get any help. And I'm saying, we have many more, or millions of First Nations people out there who just a little bit of help. I mean, I did everything literally on the smell of an oily rag through this, through instinct and struggle and drive and wanting to bring, my people along, and the youth and the children and blah, 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 or the rest. Oh, we all do. So if we have a discussion and focus it on something that we know is the future, well, our youth. And if we look at youth travellers, if we look at youth, First Nation youth travellers, First Nations tourism, you can start to see, and then they're bringing their culture with them. And the tourism side, with what I'm seeing around the world, is that COVID-19 is actually, I'm not saying it's a blessing in disguise, it's a disaster. But in some circumstances, it's actually brought us back to our roots, in a lot of ways. I see it. Yeah, and it's being brought to my attention. So we need to have a discussion, in my view, and I'm happy to be part of it, where we can actually look at co-designing something. This seems to be the buzzword in Australia, and it works, where you've got, a think tank, like-minded people. Not one person's driving it.
Yeah.
And that's a much healthier situation.
I think that the youth would be a great asset to this. Like, we're going to be asking tomorrow for a youth council. So anybody interested gets to email me your letter of interest.
Because
great.
Yeah. And in Australia, and I every forum that I face, I now, and I've done so for the past 7 months intensely, is to say, the youth of the future. I'm always looking at succession, someone to take over my role or others' role, because the youth, as I said, are more informed, they're more mobile, they don't have that baggage that us older ones have had to go through in order to get to the position.
Sorry, I think you're referring to just Adam in that conversation. Older one?
No,
Us women, we don't age.
Okay. So look, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. And look, I've got some of this really, I think, useful reports, but reports are reports, but unless you can actually take something out of them that has relevance to what we're talking about, well, they're just another report sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
But when you get onto youth, it's exciting.
I do have to wrap us up. I love you guys, but it's after our time. But I just have to make an announcement first. So tomorrow, I know one of the complaints from the youth, not a complaint, just like proper time management and being exhausted and computered out. Tomorrow we're going to start the usual time, which was listed, which was 10 Mountain Time, but we're going to be wrapping up by 2 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow. So it's going to be a condensed version, shorter breaks. The new schedule is going to be sent out to you tonight. So please take a look. Everything will be adjusted on the platform for tomorrow. Adam, you're going to be in the loop. Don't worry. I'm not just going to throw you in like a random thing. But that's all I had to say about for tomorrow. But I will let Adam give Donna a proper exit because she is amazing.
Donna, thank you so much. I look forward to us talking more and moving forward with this dialogue because, you know, it's a first for everybody in this Zoom conference, and we're just articulating for the first time and trying to connect the youth to the world, and I think we have something here.
Yeah, all kudos and you know, congratulations. I mean, I'm just, you know, one voice, but the youth will do it. They will look after us, hopefully.
Yes.
Of course they will. Of course they will. I have faith.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to our country.
Oh, I can't wait.
Some good traditional food and ceremony and dance and
yeah.
We have fields of light.
Oh, I can't
Thank you,
wait.
Adam.
Thank you, Donna.
Mama.
And to everybody else who's closing off, remember to look and fill the surveys. That's the survey in the chat, because tomorrow we're going to be picking a winner for a MacBook Air. So that's a nice gift. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for being here, and lots of love. See ya.